and I'm joined today by the one and only Alex. Lovely to meet you, Alex.
Nice to meet you, Nick.
So, where do we begin? I think the starting point for both of us is how we came to know each other and how you came to know the Happy Horologists. Let's go back maybe about 6 to 8 weeks ago now. It feels like a lifetime ago, but the memory lives on, so I'll make sure I definitely recollect the moment very, very well. So it did essentially start by us bumping into you randomly at Hands on Horology. We'll give a little shout out to Hands on Horology.
It was a great event.
It was a great event indeed. And you basically said to us, I've got a watch.
Yeah. Well, I think it was even more like it was. I can't remember if it was you or it was one of you two who basically just bumped into me and said, "What's that?" You're like, "I see that. Yeah, that's different."
That was Jason.
Yeah, it was Jason. Jason was like, yeah. Like, what is that? and I was like, oh, this. This is one of my first prototypes of the Alpharo Model 1. And what do you think? And you were both really welcoming and really really excited to see it, which was great. You know, when you put your heart and soul into a design and into getting the prototypes made, and you get positive feedback, it really gives you confidence, and it sort of it makes it all worth it, really. And so we've since spoken a little bit. We met at the recent MIC little meetup. Shout out to MIC.
Fun. Yeah, shout out to them as well. We might as well.
Yeah.
And so on the first occasion we met each other, in a nutshell, we were introduced to the white Model 1. I'm looking down because I'm looking at it along with the other two versions, and let me tell you something. They are special watches. They are very, very special watches. When I saw Alex last week, in essence, I stole the watch and wore it pretty much continuously whilst I was there. So let me tell you something, that doesn't happen with every single watch I see. So from my perspective, I know that this is something special, and it's not me saying it just because Alex is next to me. By all means, I'm happy to be open and honest, but they are special watches. They truly are. So from my point of view, today is about learning the story, the man behind the watch.
Oh. Yeah.
I know I made it sound very profound, but to me it does feel very profound because it's watches. And I want to start by just getting an idea of where it begins for you.
So the whole idea, I mean, the thing that makes it special, obviously, is the curved hands and the spiral dial. There's so much more detail that went into the design, but ultimately it was when I was 18, summer holiday just before starting university. I'm a mechanical engineer, so I was just about to start engineering studies, and I just started getting into watches. And I discovered the Rolex Milgauss, and that was a real sort of like a spark, because I was like, well, first of all, because it was an engineering watch for engineers, and I was like, I'm going to be an engineer, that's great. But then it made me think, like, that lightning set bolt seconds hand made me think, why are watch hands straight? Why are we limiting ourselves to such like monolithic straight hands? I mean, sure, you get, Dauphine hands and all these sort of interesting changes, even like Breguet and interesting shapes. But that was the first one that showed me you could be sort of functional and challenge conventions at the same time. Yeah. And so I was bored and I was sketching. I'm not a good sketcher, I have to be honest. But I just thought, well, what if the watch hands were curved? And then I sort of pushed that thought further and went, well, how would you need to read the time effectively? Because this isn't just a gimmick. It's still a tool. It still needs to be able to tell the time. And so the idea of that sort of spiraling dial, where each hour indices is essentially part of the spiral shape of the dial, helping you to read the time, was sort of born. And so while I was at university, I tried using laser cutters and 3D printers and things to make it happen, but broke student, don't have access to good tools, etc. It just I have a picture I'll have to show you of my first attempt. It became very clear to me this isn't going to work.
Okay.
So I put it on the back burner. I'd CAD'd it up. I thought so much about how am I going to fit this all together, etc. But also university, took too much time. And it was only 2.5 years ago that my dad repeatedly was like, when are you going to make that watch? I want to, I'll be your first customer. I really want to.
I think he's going to have to get ahead of me, if I'm being honest. And Jason was also enamored by this watch, so it's not just me.
I'm so sorry, my dad is getting the number one. That's non-negotiable because they should be numbered as well.
I'm going to cry after I finish this interview, but it's okay.
Yeah, and so I took the idea, which to be blunt was just a sketch, right? And I had designed it. It ended up looking a bit more like when I was a student, it looked a bit more like a sort of Braun style, that really minimalist style. And my taste had changed, so it evolved, and I can tell you it took so long to sort of iterate what exactly the hands, everything, those curved skeleton hands, and all the details about the case and the lugs. And so it took me many months of just 3D printing the designs again and again, and wearing them, and obsessing of like the width of the bezel. At one point it was too narrow, and so finally just a few months ago I got my hands on the prototypes, and they weren't right.
So we're talking a few months ago as well. So this is new, so to speak. The idea
is 10 years old.
But this is new.
And so Alpharo is the brand that I'm launching for these for this design. But there's more to Alpharo than just. There's one thing I don't want is for Alpharo to be that spiral dial watch company. I mean, it's absolutely, I think, what makes these watches so unique. But there's a lot more, I think, where you can essentially ask what if, and I think that's so important is in design, and I think that sometimes is missing a lot, is saying, well, what if we did that, and why do we do that, and challenging those, but not in a gimmicky way, and that's while still trying to get really high quality. Making really high quality, sort of choosing high quality in your for all the components and for the assembly, etc.
Okay, and one thing we spoke about last week when we were talking about the watch, we spoke about the concept behind it, so the theory behind the watch. And I know we spoke just before we were on camera about the idea of make sure I don't talk too long about it. But our view is that we want the story, we want to be enriched by it, and there may be people that are interested, there may be people that are not interested, and sometimes it's purely a visual aesthetic, and that's what the appeal is for somebody buying a watch. But there are other people who love the story, who love to know why, because you're asking the question, and you can provide the answer in this situation.
Well, so I think, to be clear, the idea of these sort of curved watch hands came first. And it was only, I would say, a couple of years ago that I learnt about the history of something called non-Euclidean geometry.
We all know about it,
of course, don't worry. Everyone, they have Euclid's elements next to their beds, they read it every night. So this idea that for thousands of years, since Euclid and the ancient Greeks, geometry was...
Pick up my ancient ancestors.
Absolutely. Was flat. Geometry was flat, and all lines are straight. And, well, you get circles and such, but a line almost by definition is straight on a flat surface. And for 2,000 or almost 2,000 years, that's more than 2,000 years, it was that was just accepted. That was just how the world works. And then it was, once again, it was in the 1800s, some young mathematicians said, well, why? Like, what if we just assumed that, lines could be curved, that space, sort of space could be curved as well? What does that do? And they ended up creating what's called non-Euclidean geometry.
You heard it here first.
Groundbreaking idea in the 1800s. And so you end up with this crazy new universe of geometry where you can have infinite number of parallels rather than just having, you just end up with this crazy curved space. That was just a gimmick for a very long time. Okay. For almost, for like 60, 80 years, it was just a gimmick. Most mathematicians said, well, what's the point? It doesn't do anything. And then Einstein came along.
Well, Einstein.
You may have heard of him.
He's familiar.
Old Albert. And it turns out that this idea of curved space-time is the only way to accurately sort of describe space-time as we know it, and so it turns out when you're using GPS on your phone, when you're doing all these things, the calculations aren't done assuming straight lines. They're all done in curves. And
that's new knowledge. If I'm honest, that is very new knowledge. We don't think about them.
No, and so it's crazy how, and what I love about it was this idea of mathematicians sort of saying, well, but what if, why, let's assume the opposite and let's see where it takes us. Mm-hmm. And that's really what I did with these watches. I said, well, what if? Why are watch hands straight? And I let that guide me in designing the watch. And so after I discovered this whole idea of non-Euclidean geometry, I also discovered there's a lot of beautiful mathematical art that comes out of non-Euclidean geometry. And one type of art is called the Poincaré disc. And so...
you guys can't see, but you will be seeing very soon, don't worry.
And so it's a 2D representation of hyperbolic geometry. And so this is technically the infinite plane in hyperbolic geometry with lines. The lines look curved, but in the hyperbolic world, they're sort of straight. Okay. But I just think it's really beautiful. And I've heard it looks like a cobweb. I've heard lots of interesting sort of ideas of what is it.
It's not a cobweb, just to be clear.
It can be a cobweb if you want it to be. But crucially, I just think it looks really pretty. And I've often heard from people that I always thought that a very sterile caseback is, unless it's there for, for example, the back of a Reverso, where, it's almost made to be engraved. Yeah. It almost feels like a lost opportunity.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And so that was sort of why I decided I really wanted something that looks sort of exciting to look at. And it's almost like, I wouldn't call the design at the front minimalist, but I would say it's quite simple. Yeah. And so I like the idea of, what's the expression? A business at the front, party at the back. That's sort of the idea behind the design. And so that was sort of where this whole non-Euclidean aspect goes into it. And final thing is that the logo of Alpharo is a representation of parallel lines in hyperbolic geometry. So that's sort of how it all ties it all together.
There's a few thoughts. As you're talking, one of me just wants to just sit there and gush at the information and knowledge you have about these ideas. But the other part of me, again, as you turn the watch over, and again, guys, you will be seeing it shortly, the little porthole. I love the idea of a little porthole. So there is an idea that you get a little taste of the rotor as it's spinning around, and we were just talking about it beforehand, and there is something very subtle but yet important about that porthole. Yeah. Because we've got decoration on the back, and that looks great, but that little porthole is just a window of opportunity to see the functioning of the watch.
I think, and also it's a practical decision because the watch doesn't have a seconds hand. Now, the one question, whenever you have a two-hand watch, unless you're like an incredibly high-end Patek or something like that, the question is always, why don't you have a second hand? And the genuine answer is because when I added a curved seconds hand to the design, it just didn't look right.
So, traditionally speaking, dress watches were two-handers.
Right, and the idea is with a dress watch you don't need to know the seconds, etc. But yeah, so basically adding a seconds hand just breaks your brain in a way that as soon as you see a curved seconds hand, it's like your brain corrects the spiral and everything just starts looking straight again. Okay. And it just looked wrong. And so I was like, right, it can't have a seconds hand, but and this is where a porthole makes a lot of sense because you can then see that the watch is running. Yeah. So you can just turn it over, and if the balance wheel is spinning away, oscillating away, the watch is running. Yeah. And also, I find it's the age-old question, closed caseback or open caseback, and no one can seem to agree. Yep. And especially when it comes to, if you've got a crazy Vaucher movement or something, yes, open makes total sense. Yeah. But with a Miyota 9000 series movement, I think it's a great-looking movement, but I know a lot of people have seen it a million times before, and so I thought this was a great compromise between having something great to look at with a closed caseback while still having a functional look at the watch running and giving still for people like me who like an open caseback, sort of seeing the watch sort of really at work, seeing the mechanism do its thing. And so that was the sort of thinking behind it.
I've got a confession to make, which I think is that I've probably spent more time staring downwards at the watches than I have actually looking at the screen. And the reason for that is I'm genuinely in love with these pieces. And is it worth us talking a little bit about the dimensions of the watch? Is it worth us getting into not only the aesthetics, but how it wears on the wrist, talking about what the dials look like, which you will be seeing, and also thinking about the straps that it comes with and the options available as well, just so we can give a more rounded picture of what we're working with here and what I'll be owning very soon.
Yeah. So it's a 38mm watch, which I have moderately small wrists, I'd say. I can maybe push up to about 42, is about as, a Speedmaster is about as large as I feel comfortable wearing, or an SKX. But the 38 I feel like is a real sweet spot for me. Because it's very dial forward, it's a large dial relative to the size, I really didn't want to go much larger than that. I've often found sort of 40mm dress watches they're just a little bit too big. And so Nomos is an example of a brand where 38 could look great, but then those lugs are just a little bit long for people like me. And so I really went for, I worked to try and get the lugs what many people would say reasonable, and so it ended up being just over 45mm lug to lug.
So that spot.
Absolutely, and really my target was something first of all for me, to be blunt, being very selfish in my design.
By all means, if you're designing a watch and it doesn't work for you, why are you designing the watch?
And also because the spiral dial is the star of the show, I didn't want to make it too small. If I'd made it 36 or 35, I feel like it, you want to show off the dial. You want to show off the hands a bit. The hands are quite big for a watch that, of this size. And so that was the sort of the thinking behind 38mm. And so I feel like it's small enough that someone with smaller wrists like me, or even my wife, can wear it without it looking large at all.
He's not single.
No, sorry. and then, but also large enough that someone with larger wrists, who's used to wearing, a Seamaster or things like that, won't shy away from it, because it is, it is a large dial. It has presence on the wrist, and so it isn't like you're wearing a tiny little Cartier tank that fades away on your wrist.
And I guess the other element here is we've got sort of the lug to lug, and that for me being a sweet spot as well personally. Would you identify it as an everyday watch, more of a dress watch?
I've dreaded this question. It's a really important question, because to me, I think a dress watch is like a watch that, you wear it with a black tie event. That to me, or if you're working in like a really formal office environment. But it's what I've always loved about brands like Ming, Anordain, Nomos. Then I think of them as design-forward, everyday watches. Now, no one's going to say that this is a Gada watch. Absolutely not. It's 5 atmospheres. It's fine for everyday life. Of water resistance. But to me, it's like, I'm not going jet skiing every day. I'm not like, desk diving is to be fair, I do work in a workshop. I'm a mechanical engineer. I use tools. But I feel like it's I suppose an everyday dress watch is what most people would call it.
And I'd probably argue the same, to be honest with you. I'd probably argue the same. Thickness-wise, we're looking at sub 10, which again is the magic number.
That was my absolute goal, and part of the reason I chose the Miyota 9000 series over, for example, Sellita movements. It just made it a little bit easier to make the watch as thin as possible. And so I could have made it, extra tenths of a millimeter thinner by having a completely flat crystal, but I found that ever so slight curve on that double dome sapphire crystal just elevates it a little bit. I can't really explain why, but that was a real sort of decision, and so it ended up being sub 10. I think it's 9.8. I'll have to double check.
9.85.
No, oh right, thank you. 9.85 millimeters, and so it fits under any shirt cuff. I've had the problem. I wore an SKX for many years.
A very different type of watch.
But and trying to wear that under like a shirt cuff, forget it. It's difficult, and so. I love it for that.
So, we've spoken a little bit about the dial itself. Not enough, because I'm looking at 3 of the watches in front of me, and they've all got different dial colours. So I think it's natural to move on to that.
Sure.
And then think a little bit more about strap options, because I know we were just having a conversation before about that. So, dial colours, what's the inspiration, what's the idea behind it? I find myself focusing on one particular watch, but if I'm being honest, I could wear all 3 comfortably if you're willing to give them away.
So ultimately, I like the idea of colourful watches, but to me it makes sense to start with sort of getting the basics right. And to me, the basics is white, black, and blue. Now, if they were just plain white, plain black, plain blue, I think people wouldn't be very interested. And so to me, I really love the first one. The first where it all started was the white/silver dial, where it's a bead blasted sort of a silver, such that it appears white under most light, but when in some lights it definitely looks like a frosted silver, and in some lights where under harsh sort of like sunlight, it's got that sort of rainbow sparkle, which I love on sort of like
iridescence, as it were.
Exactly, and so from there I went to the black and the blue, because I knew they'd look pretty good. The black was the one that I was the most sort of nervous about, because the black because the 3D curved sort of spiral of the dial is absolutely integral to the design, and I was worried with black that would just be gone. You know, when you see those Vanta Black sort of watches where it just looks totally
it's incredible
flat.
But it's flat.
Exactly. And so here I worked to get this sort of fume effect from a sort of charcoal in the middle to black on the outside, and to add sort of that to that 3D effect, it's got sunburst effect on the dial, such that, you know, in under the right lights as you're moving it around, you just get this really cool effect that I just love. And then the blue dial is the one that I think has had the most interest, which I think is interesting.
No interest at all. No.
And so it's a translucent blue lacquer. It's a fume dial again, from a sort of I would say mid blue in the middle to a navy blue on the outside, and it's translucent. So under bright light, you can sort of see there's a slight translucency to it, but it's arguably the simplest in terms of finish.
Okay.
But it's sort of an exciting color, and I think it shows how much potential there is for other colors going forward as well.
I don't know whether I want to reveal any ideas you have about the other colours moving forward, so I won't be saying anything there. And I think naturally I want to move on towards the straps, and again, sometimes straps can make a watch. So just again for you, what were the processes you went through in deciding what straps to go for? So
I unfortunately have quite a few watches that have 19mm lug widths. And so I didn't want that to happen again. I was like, right, it's going to be 20. And 38, 20 is just doable. You know, doing 20 mil on like a 37 mil watch, it just starts to look out of proportion. And so the straps are all 20mm straps. And to sort of fit the sort of dressy aspect of the watch, 20mm to 16mm, you know, down to 16mm buckle, I find is that sort of, it just gives that nice, slightly vintage look that just looks really, really nice. And so we'll be offering it on 3 strap options, a black Butero strap, because Butero leather just looks absolutely stunning. So it's a Butero leather with a Zermatt leather lining, and I just think it just looks so classy with that.
I was going to say exactly the same word.
Exactly. And then a navy blue Epsom, which works on the blue or the white. They look, honestly, the black strap works on all 3. The blue looks good on the white and the blue, obviously. And then the third option, as a sort of a non-leather alternative, is a Milanese mesh bracelet, 20mm, and I've gone for sort of like a sort of a one that I think works well with all 3 colours in terms of finish, and those are the 3 options that will be available with the watch.
Yeah, and I guess we had a conversation about the idea of having a Milanese or mesh bracelet as well, and that was really interesting. I can. Yeah, I mean, it was when I first presented the watch to some people at Red Bar Cambridge, and someone came up to me and said, I love the watch, but you know, I'm a vegan, and I prefer not to buy watches with leather straps. And I was like, oh, well, yeah, that's fair. That's so reasonable. I should really make sure I offer something different. And I've always loved mesh bracelets, and I was genuinely considering having mesh bracelet as an option in the future, but it just sort of gave me that sort of that sort of spurred me to actually find suppliers and find a high quality one. I probably ended up buying about 20 samples until I found one that I was like, okay, this is what I want to go on the watch. And then putting it on, it's got just that little bit of bling that you know, I quite like, but you know, some people, of course, they can stick with a sort of sober. But I think again, when we were out last Friday, we tried the Blue Fumet on the mesh bracelet. And it worked really well as a combination.
Definitely.
So I'm talking and coming from a place of experience, having tried the watch on leather straps, but also on the mesh bracelets. And I can vouch for both, if I'm honest, because I was pleasantly surprised. I'm not necessarily a bracelet person per se, but can appreciate a nice Milanese or mesh bracelet. And actually...
on the right watch.
Yeah, on the right watch. And the combination worked really well.
Yeah.
The only other thing I wanted to add, just because I know it's recently been one of the teasers you've put on your Instagram account, is the crown.
Oh yeah, well,
a small detail, but one that I think also is part of the language of the watch.
Yeah,
I guess.
100%. I mean, I could go into so much detail about every aspect of the watch. Like, so the crown, the crown has 12 grooves. I suppose spline, I'm a mechanical engineer, I like to use the word spline. 12 splines, grooves that go around the watch to mirror the 12 arcs on the dial, the 12-hour markers on the dial. And they are at an angle, and they're curved such that they essentially, if you follow the 3 o'clock curve, and that line continues into the grooves on the crown. And it's these little details that I obsessed over, and you know, my case manufacturer was like, you know, I don't think this is possible, you know, asking for a helical cut into the crown, and you know, so there was some back and forth about that, and for example, the side of the crown, it looks flat, right? The side of the crown looks like it's just a sharp. It's not. It's technically concentric. It's curved. You can't really see it very closely unless you look top down. You really look very hard. It's curved such that it's concentric with the dial and the case.
Okay.
If you look at the side, you can see a bit more closely. That's not a flat surface. And little things like, for example, the lugs. The end of the lugs, top down, is also concentric. So it's all about concentric on concentric. Things like, for example, the arcs on the dial, right? They're exactly the same radius as the dial itself, as the diameter of the dial. So essentially, everything finds, you know, every radius is considered, and it's, you know, it can seem arbitrary, but it's like, you know, using the golden ratio for like for certain rectangular watches.
Yeah.
They end up just looking better. And so by choosing these little things, these little details and things like the lyre lugs, was another way to sort of add more curve to the lugs that without it was just missing something, and I added that, and I was like, that's it, it's captured what I'm looking for. And so so many small details like the crown, the lugs, everything has just sort of gone into it. So it's why it took me a long time.
Something definitely to be proud of. I mean, as I said, I fell in love when I first saw the watch. I fell in love again when I saw the watch a second time, and I've got all three in front of me, and I'm just thinking, which one am I going to try on first? So I know that we could talk forever, because I know the details you can go into are incredible, but I also know that we want to ensure that we don't go on forever.
Yeah.
So we will leave things there.
Yeah, sure.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Alex. Thank you for your time. Really appreciate it. And we're on to something very special here.
Definitely. Yeah, make sure you follow Alpharo_UK on Instagram, or have a look at our website, alpharo.co.uk.
And do you want to just say a little bit about, I guess, when it will be available?
Yeah. So it will be available to pre-order on Kickstarter from the 9th of September. And pricing will be around £500 to £600. That will be confirmed well before then, definitely. But it's going to be available for about 21 days, and then shipped to customers I'm aiming for early February 2026 is the objective.
Great, that's great to know. We'd like to make sure everyone knows pricing. It's always good to have a rough idea of it as well. So we'll leave it there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is the knowledge about non-Euclidean geometry requirement?
Oh no! Anyone, honestly, you can just look at it for what it is and say it's a beautiful watch and leave it at that. I mean, to be honest, you know, I'm sorry, I tapped the microphone. I'm not a mathematician. I just love the story. And you won't catch me doing actual sort of like complicated equations in non-Euclidean geometry. I just love the story and the history of mathematics and how, you know, you can mirror that in the watch.
Yeah, love it. Absolutely love it.
Thank you.
Thank you.